Welcome to my channel. This is KN Victoria. This video is on ELT Monitor Theory by Stephen Den Krashen. Let's begin. Monitor Model Theory, Stephen Den Krashen. Introduction. Stephen Den Krashen, 1941, a linguistic and educational researcher, is a professor emeritus at the University of Southern California, who moved from the linguistics department to the faculty of the School of Education in 1994. Krashen is an expert in the field of linguistics, specializing in theories of language acquisition and development. Much of his recent research has involved the study of non-English and bilingual language acquisition. Since 1980, he has published well over 100 books and articles and has been invited to deliver over 300 lectures at universities throughout the United States and Canada. Historical background. Stephen Krashen proposed the monitor model as his theory of second language acquisition. In his influential text, Principles and Practice in Second Language Acquisition in 1982, Krashen, along with Terrell, 1983, established that students learning a second language move through 5 predictable stages. It is based on Krashen's theory of language acquisition, which assumes that speech emerges in the following 5 stages. Number 1. Pre-production stage or listening and gesture. 2. Early production stage or short phrases and expressions. 3. Speech emergency stage or long phrase and sentences. 4. Intermediate fluency stage or general conversation and advanced fluency stage or skillful communication and interaction on various practical situations. This is a brief description of Krashen's widely known and well accepted theory of second language acquisition, which has had a large impact in all areas of second language teaching, learning, and research. Key concepts of hypothesis. Krashen Monitor Model has enjoyed considerable prominence in SL research. The most comprehensive of existing theories, this is justified. Krashen's theory of second language acquisition and learning is known as Monitor Model, which posits 6 hypotheses about second language acquisition and learning. Number 1. The acquisition learning hypothesis. Number 2. The monitor hypothesis. Number 3. The natural order hypothesis. Number 4. The input hypothesis and the affective filter hypothesis. Besides the above 5 hypotheses, Krashen has put forward another hypothesis in 2003, what he calls the comprehension hypothesis. You can remember 6 hypotheses by mnemonic acronym AMNIAC. The acquisition learning hypothesis. The acquisition learning distinction, which states that adults have 2 distinct and independent ways of developing competence in a second language. The acquisition learning distinction, which states that adults have 2 distinct and independent ways of developing competence in a second language. Acquisition, which is a subconscious process similar, if not identical, to the way children develop ability in their first language, and learning, which refers to conscious knowledge of the rules of grammar of second language and their application in production. According to Krashen, there are two independent ways or systems in which human beings develop their linguistic skills and performance. Number one, the acquired systems and the learned system. And two, the learned system. The acquired system or acquisition is the product of subconscious process, very similar to the process children undergo when they acquire their first language. It requires meaningful interaction in the target language, natural communication in which speakers are concentrated not in the form of their utterance but in the communicative act. The learned system or learning is the product of formal instruction and it comprises a conscious process which results in conscious knowledge about the language. For example, knowledge of grammar rules. A deductive approach in a teacher-centered setting produces learning, while an inductive approach in a student-centered setting leads to acquisition. Learning demands for accuracy rather than fluency. On the other hand, acquisition claims for fluency rather than accuracy. According to Krashen, learning is less important than acquisition. The natural order hypothesis. The natural order hypothesis, which maintains that acquisition of grammatical structures, primarily morphemes, proceeds in a predictable order when that acquisition is natural formal learning. It based on research findings which suggested that the acquisition of grammatical structures follows a natural order. For a given language, some grammatical structures tend to be acquired early while others late. This order seemed to be independent of the learner's age, first language L1 background, conditions of exposure, and although the agreement between individual acquirers was not always 100% in the studies, and there were statistically significant similarities that reinforce the existence of a natural order of language acquisition. The monitor hypothesis. The monitor hypothesis, which states that acquisition is the sole initiator of the all second language utterance and is responsible for fluency, while learning conscious knowledge of rules can function only as an editor or monitor for the output. This monitor operates only when there is sufficient time, the focus is on form, and the language user knows the rule being applied. The monitor hypothesis asserts that a learner's learned system acts as a monitor to what they are producing. In other words, while only the acquired system is able to produce spontaneous speech, the learned system is used to check what is being spoken. The monitor hypothesis explains the relationship between acquisition and learning and defines the influence of the latter on the former. The monitoring function is the practical result of the learned grammar. According to Krashen, the acquisition system is the utterance initiator, while the learning system performs the role of the monitor or the editor. The monitor acts in a planning, editing, and correcting function when the following three specific conditions are met. Number 1. The second language learner has sufficient time at their disposal. Number 2. They focus on form or think about correctness. Number 3. They know the rule. It appears that the role of conscious learning is somewhat limited in second language performance. According to Krashen, the role of the monitor is minor and it is used only to correct deviations from normal speech and to give speech a more polished appearance. Krashen also suggests that there is individual variation among language learners with regard to monitor use. He distinguishes those learners into three categories as number one, that use the monitor all the time are overusers. Number two, those learners who have not learned or who prefer not to use their conscious knowledge are underusers. And three, those learners that use the monitor appropriately are optimal users. An evaluation of the person's psychological profile can help to determine to what group they belong. Usually, introverts are underusers, while extroverts and perfectionists are overusers. Lack of self-confidence is frequently related to the overuse of the monitor. An evaluation of the person's psychological profile can help you determine to what group they belong. Usually, introverts are underusers, while extroverts and perfectionists are overusers. Lack of self-confidence is frequently related to the overuse of the monitor. The input hypothesis. We acquire more language only when we are exposed to comprehensible input. Language that contains structures that are a little beyond our current level of competence, I+1, but which comprehensible through our use of context, our knowledge of the world, and other extra linguistic cues directed to us. According to the hypothesis, acquirers go for meaning first and as a result acquire structure as well. A third part of this hypothesis states that input need not to be deliberately planned to contain appropriate structure. If communication is successful and there is enough of it, I+1 is provided automatically. A final part of the input hypothesis maintains that speaking fluency cannot be taught directly, but rather emerges naturally over time. Krashen maintains that although early speech is not grammatically accurate, accuracy will develop over time as the acquirers hear and understands more input. Conclusion. Stephen Krashen's monitor model might be the most cited theory, issue and question for acquisition and learning a second language. He believes that we all acquire language in the same way. He explains language acquisition is subconscious and result from informal and natural communication. On the other hand, language learning is conscious and driven by error correction, and grammar structure are acquired in a predictable order gradually. Motivation, self-esteem, and anxiety are three driving forces which factor greatly in a second language learning acquisition. He finally ascertains that optimal language acquisition occurs in one way and only where a comprehensible input is ensured in a low anxiety environment with high motivation and self-esteem. That's all about today. Thank you.